Democratic Whip.
Mr. President, last week I came to the floor on Wednesday to tell the story of some high school kids in Chicago. They did a remarkable thing last Tuesday, 6 days ago. These kids live in a neighborhood known as Little Village, and they go to high school there, to some well-respected high schools, Little Village, Lawndale high schools. They decided on Tuesday to stage a parade in Little Village to protest what ICE is doing to that community and to the city of Chicago. It was peaceful, it was constructive. They marched several blocks, carried copies of the Constitution with them, American flags, Mexican flags, signs that they had prepared. I remember one, I'm going to misstate exactly what it said, but it basically said, our parents have done so much to protect us, now we're going to do everything we can to protect them. I went on Friday to meet with these students. Turned out they were all girls, all women, Latina students. Some reason or another, the boys didn't get into the organization, though they did participate in the parade. These young women, about 15 of them, sat with me in a room and we talked for over an hour about their deepest personal and emotional feelings about what was happening to their families and what they did to stage this parade. Mr. President, I've been to a lot of meetings with a lot of so-called experts on this country and its future, but I learned more in that hour at that high school with those girls, those young women, than in many of those other meetings. They knew exactly what they were doing was dangerous. Their parents had warned them not to stage a parade because the ICE agents had been in the neighborhood in the previous 2 weeks. But they were determined to do something and say something. Most of them were in tears as they talked to me about what they felt personally about this experience. One of the leaders said, I'm an American. I was born here. I love this country and I want to be part of it. Look what it's doing to our families. And another young woman broke down when she said that right before the parade happened, her father had been detained. She said in tears over and over again, my father is not a criminal. Her father's been involved for 7 years to try to get his citizenship status cleared up. He's been back and forth in court. He was in the process of doing this when he was detained and has been spirited off somewhere we don't know. I thought of that experience and what those young girls had been through. And I thought about the courage they showed, their love of this country, their determination to be part of it, but their love of their family and their willingness to risk everything for their parents. That's the reality of life in Chicago and many neighborhoods today. When President Trump announced publicly that he was going to send in the military if necessary, but the ICE forces to go through Chicago, he said he was looking for rapists and murderers and terrorists and the criminally insane. He says it over and over again. Well, guess who he's arresting? Guess who they're detaining? They have yet to report one rapist, murderer, terrorist. They're taking people, they're taking the man that sells the tamales on the corner. I'm not kidding. A man who, for 75-year-old man, who sells what they call elote, which are corn cobs that they steam and are very popular in the community. Rapists, murderers, terrorists, criminally insane? No. Some of them are clearly out of status in their citizenship papers. Some are American citizens. Of all the people that they've arrested and detained, 70% of them have no criminal record. No criminal record, and yet they're being harassed. And they picked the weekend to do that, this last weekend, which is so special to so many American families. I think if I had to pin my wife down on her favorite holiday, it would be Halloween. She loves it. She gets these big bowls of candy, and the kids come from everywhere in our neighborhood in Springfield. And they did just this last Friday. I'm sure many of us had a similar experience. The kids are so excited to get free candy and show off their costumes, and she greets every one of them like they're her grandkids. It's a personal thing. We were worried about this last Halloween weekend in Chicago because of the ICE forces that were roaming the streets. Governor Pritzker asked for a special favor. He asked the ICE agents to take off Halloween night, spare the kids, don't make them worry about whether they go out for candy, whether somebody's going to be arrested. I joined him in that plea. I thought it was common sense. You know what happened? Kristi Noem, who is the Secretary of DHS, said, by no way, by no means, we're going out if necessary. And they did. The ICE agents went to Evanston, which is a town just north of the city of Chicago, and an incident occurred there which was incredible. The ICE agents were roaming through the town looking for landscape workers. Well, guess what's going on? Those landscape workers are raking leaves, and they're doing their work that they do every year. We count on them to do. And this year, ICE was going to arrest them, and they did. Terrible things happened, too. There's a long story. I ask unanimous consent that this story from the Chicago Tribune be entered into the record at this point. Thank you, Mr. President. When you read this article, you realize what is happening here. These ICE agents, whom Kristi Noem calls her dream team, have completely ignored the Constitution when it comes to due process. They are snatching up people right and left. Who are their targets? The Hispanic population, for sure, or anyone who looks Hispanic, or anyone who lives in an Hispanic neighborhood, or anyone who stands on a street corner with a whistle to try to warn off people that the ICE agents are coming. And certainly those who are in the occupations normally filled by immigrants, like landscape workers. Those are the targets. This is a racist effort. I use that word advisedly. It is a racist effort. It is not about terrorists and murderers and rapists. It's about people with an accent, people who look like they're Hispanic. Well, that's what happened in the city of Evanston. And as their vans, unmarked vans, roam through the neighborhoods, these masked secret police of the efforts in the immigration agencies were roaming through the neighborhoods looking for anyone who appeared to be Spanish. And that's what they did. I want to read a statement. They pulled over a man, certainly not Spanish. His name is Morgan Krupinski, part of the great Polish population of the city of Chicago. Listen to what he had to say after he watched the ICE agents go through his neighborhood in Skokie. Skokie resident Morgan Krupinski said 2 workers from an American company were detained. The Scottish Plumber is the name of the company, were doing flood control work on his property in the 8300 block of Harding Avenue when federal agents' vehicles came down the residential street. The agents stopped and demanded documents from both workers, who were able to produce evidence that they were in fact U.S. citizens. I'm angry, said Krupinski, who identified himself as a Republican and a conservative. As someone who believes in the Constitution, he said, for someone to be stopped by federal agents because of the color of their skin and their appearance, and to be asked for papers is completely unimaginable and completely unconstitutional. Because where is probable cause? Where is reasonable search and seizure? They're working in a residential neighborhood. And then he said, as someone who voted for this president, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for people to be harassed. I didn't vote for people to be brought out at gunpoint with machine guns and to harass Americans. That's in the article that I put in the record. So I say to my Republican friends, if you think you're winning in the popular vote with this approach, think twice. This is not American. This is not necessary. This is intimidation. An intimidation felt by a high school in a little village in Chicago, an intimidation felt by a suburb north of Chicago, which is not usually characterized as Hispanic in nature. But they were going after the workers who were raking the leaves. It's really an amazing experience, historical experience, constitutional experience that we're facing. And it's one that we won't soon forget. And as I reflect on going back every weekend and seeing further evidence of this travesty, I think, bottom line, there are good stories coming out of this as well. Neighbors who finally gather together with their neighbors in their neighborhood and stand up for those who are being harassed by ICE and its agencies. There's another thing that's going on too, Mr. President, that seems to be totally unrelated, but I want to call it out. If you're looking for a kosher delicatessen in Chicago, let me tell you my favorite, Manny's. It's right off Roosevelt Road in downtown Chicago. The Raskin family's owned this deli for many years, 80 in fact. And Danny Raskin, grandson of the founder of the delicatessen, is running it today. He's a wonderful young businessman. He's struggling with the impact of the trade war and the impact of increasing costs for the basic products he sells. But you won't find a better pastrami sandwich or corned beef or latke or kreplach soup anywhere in America. Danny's is one of the best. Why do I bring in this advertisement for Danny Raskin? I want to tell you why. Manny's Deli, located right by the University of Illinois at Chicago, has been a legend in the community for 8 decades. If you walk into Manny's, you'll see a microcosm of the city of Chicago. People from everywhere, every kind of background, join together over a fondness for his hearty portions and delicious sandwiches. Manny's has been a staple of this community, and today they announced they will provide free meals for those on SNAP. Free meals. Why has Manny's found it necessary to feed those on SNAP? Because President Trump became the first president in history to deliberately disrupt the processing of November SNAP benefits, jeopardizing 42 million Americans' food security. Although the Department of Agriculture was told by 2 federal courts that they had the authority to fully fund SNAP, today they announced they'll only pay half of November benefits. That is going to cause a real hardship to the millions of Americans who count on what used to be known as the food stamp program. Thankfully, Manny's Delicatessen in Chicago is willing to do what the Trump administration is not, working to make sure that nobody in their city goes hungry. They're going to offer a sandwich, a potato pancake, and some dessert to these people who come in with SNAP cards. I'm grateful to the great staff at Manny's and their owner, Danny Raskin, for their generosity as SNAP payments are cut under President Trump. And Manny's isn't the only restaurant in the city of Chicago helping those on SNAP. It's one among many stepping up across Chicago to make sure that Illinoisans don't go hungry. Taza Italian Ristorante, Wooden Paddle, and one of the better pizza places, Lou Malnati's, other restaurants as well, are offering SNAP recipients free or discounted lunch during the month of November. I'm grateful for their assistance as Chicagoans face the reality of President Trump's cruel SNAP cuts. And I hope we here in Washington will learn from the kindness demonstrated by these restaurants and that they will work as hard as they do to feed and keep America safe. Let me just add in closing, there's another man involved in this story, and I want to mention his name. It's Wayne Gordon. Wayne Gordon was a minister of Lawndale Christian Church for over 40 years. He graduated from Wheaton College, went into the ministry after he had coached basketball at Farragut High School, and started the church in the Lawndale section, a poor, largely black section of Chicago. But he and his wife moved there 40 years ago and still live there to this day. They started Lawndale Christian. He is an evangelical minister who prays for me every day, thank goodness, and I try to return the favor. But I'm sure he was the mentor that Danny Raskin mentioned as his inspiration for providing this food. Hats off to Coach Wayne Gordon and Danny Raskin for this amazing display of caring at a time when it's needed more than ever. Let me close by saying this, Mr. President. We can solve this problem in the Senate, and we can do it this week. There is no excuse. The President is back from his trip overseas. The House can be called into session and return, and they should be, sooner rather than later. And we can sit down and work out the problem of what to do with skyrocketing health insurance premiums. Let me tell you what I've been told by the Illinois Department of Insurance. They told me that hospital insurance premiums are going to double in the northern part of our state near Chicago and triple in the rural small town sections downstate. Triple the current level of health insurance premiums. How in the world will a family struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck manage that? That's a legitimate question. My Republican friends should join me in asking that question. And they should go beyond these vague references the president made last night on 60 Minutes about we have some ideas. I've heard that for years now, and we don't know what those ideas are. What we should do is sit down and work together to solve both problems. Open up the government, which we can do when we reach an agreement, and we can, of going forward on health costs that are going to make 24 million Americans lose their health insurance. We all should share feelings about the families that are struggling with this, both things, and we can do it if we work together. Drop the fanfare, close the door, find a table, invite the president and the leaders, Republican and Democrat, get it done this week. We can do it. I believe we can if we have the will to do it. I hope some people will step up on the other side of the aisle and join in this bipartisan effort. It's the only way to end this government shutdown. I yield the floor.